Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. I'm really glad that you're here. This is an important show. It is about one of the things I get asked about the most, which is social emotional learning, SEL. I probably get 5 or 6 questions a day. What is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is this it? Look at my lesson plan, whatever. So I've brought Ramona Bessinger here today. She's a 22-year veteran of teaching. She's an English teacher. You may have heard about her because she has been sidelined by her Rhode Island school district for the past year. And while she's on administrative leave, she still is in the school. So she's, observing what's happening. And she's still, of course, staying abreast of what's going on in her school, what's going on in education. Of course, that's her responsibility as a teacher. And she actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, I have some things to show you about SEL. We need to have a conversation about this. So I asked her to join me for a live program so you can also ask questions. And we're going to look at some receipts. We're going to look at some words written by the people who are proponents of this stuff. But if you are new to this channel, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I welcome you and ask that you please consider subscribing so you can be notified when I make more content like this. Also, please like and share this broadcast with others because you never know who might be interested in learning more about social emotional learning, other parents, other teachers, just concerned taxpayers. We're spending billions of dollars on this, guys. So you really ought to know what's going on in your kids' schools. Let's see. What else can I tell you about Ramona? She, as I said, has been sidelined, specifically from teaching American literature and British literature. She has extensive background in curriculum development and implementation and has taught in 2 different school systems. Right now, she's in Rhode Island. She began to sound the alarm when she saw a bizarre shift in education that took place in Providence about critical race theory. She started noticing it was seeping into all kinds of material. And she, didn't know what to call it at first, later learned that it was CRT and began to sound the alarm. That caused her to be sidelined. There were some protests. She's had nothing but glowing reviews and won, all kinds of accolades over the years. Or students have loved her, the parents have loved her. But because she was asking a lot of questions and, critiquing this stuff and didn't really want to teach it in her classroom, that's why they put her on leave. So now she's seeing the same warning flags and the same kind of things seeping into every aspect of the curriculum around social emotional learning. And it's become, according to her, and I would agree, the central focus of every class and every subject matter area. So she's here to share with us what she's found and give you a sort of boots on the ground perspective, which is so valuable because, as I said, we so often get asked, but what does it look like? And what am I looking for? And why is it bad? So the title is, is it harming our kids? We're going to attempt to present you with information. Ultimately, you'll be the judge, but obviously we'll share our opinion. And please join me in welcoming Ramona Bessinger. Good evening. Hello.
Hi there. Thanks
How
for
are you?
doing this.
Well,
Having
you're
me.
thanking me. It's like, Deb, please, can I come show parents what I found? No, I don't know.
Honestly.
I have to think about it. I'm not really sure the parents want to
Yeah,
hear about what's going on.
it's crazy.
So you're doing us all a favor
Mhm.
because I'm a platform, but I'm not there on the ground. You are. You're there. You're in the schools, even though they won't really have you in the classroom at the moment. Tell people how it is, though, that you're able to still see this stuff. Because people might say, well, she's not in the classroom. How is she seeing it? So,
Well, I've been seeing it, for quite some time. And also I have a child in the district currently. So I'm seeing it both ways. I'm seeing it as an educator, but I'm seeing it as a mother as well. So I'm seeing all the curriculum items that are coming down the Pike in my son's district, but also what I've been exposed to, and kind of putting it together like everybody else over time, realizing that this is not it's certainly not social. It has nothing to do with the emotional, and it certainly has nothing to do with learning. So,
well, actually, it is all those things, but just not in any kind of good way.
right.
But that's basically our argument, right? But we're here tonight to kind of show people why we might say that, why we think it's more than just a time waster, right? Because right now it's in every class in the school. I think a lot of parents think it's like health class, or it's just a little session about your feelings. Then we go back to math. And what you're telling me, what I've been seeing, but you're now seeing as well, is it's school wide. It's in everything, right?
It's completely integral in the entire culture of the school, K through 12. It is in the after school programs. And the thing is, it's not like you have separate lessons or even measurable activities. It's an ideology that exists. And that's why it's very, very difficult for people to fully understand this trend in education that is, in my opinion, very harmful. And you see it everywhere. Every single lesson has an SEL component. You see social movements in schools guided by SEL.
Right.
And really, it's just every single aspect of K-12 education has that SEL ideology running through
Now,
it.
when you say ideology,
Yeah.
I think of an underlying set of premises or ideas, beliefs that guide teaching or guide all the other, presentation, curriculum, et cetera. So, for example, just to analogize it, let's say if you have an ideology that is based in Christianity, let's say it's, that then theoretically you would be teaching through that perspective. So when you teach science, maybe you teach it that way. When you teach history, you might focus on that, and that's just an established religion. But let's take a political one. If you were thinking of an ideology like progressive
Marxism.
ideology, Marxism. Okay, let's do Marxism. You would teach through a lens of like class status and power and privilege. And oh wait, that is what they're doing. Anyway, but with SEL though, there's something extra, isn't there? I mean, you
Hmm.
mentioned to me seeing it as a kind of like a delivery system, or so
Yeah.
not in and of itself an ideology, but like a delivery system for perhaps the Marxism, which the critical theory, which is a kind of Marxism. Is that what you think it is? That
Well,
the S.
before we can even see that whole Marxist piece, I mean, I think we understand it only because we've been in it for quite some time. But I'm talking more about that sort of like the way it infiltrates every single subject. For example, the health and sex ed. You're seeing this push rather than have evidence-based, science-based, and measurable goals in the school. You're
Mhm,
seeing this push to sort of enhance the learning experience through all this sort of therapeutic, understanding the student, understanding every student's pathology, if they even have any pathologies, understanding, every single thing that you're supposed to know on an emotional level about a student as a way to enhance learning. It's
mhm,
completely ridiculous. It does not enhance learning. And in fact, we've seen over the last couple of years a complete breakdown and the lowest breakdown in education, but the lowest reading and writing scores. My own son's school used to be at the top of, number one or two in Rhode Island. It has now slipped to, I don't even know, some embarrassing place. Why is that? Well, because they're focusing less on measurable goals and academia and literature and universal themes, and more about, oh, we've got to teach kids about activism because that will help them be better students and get better grades. Oh, we need to teach them about, media literacy because that will help. We have to teach them how to be human beings because they don't have anybody around them that will actually help them. We need to get
And then
them
we're going to send them
thinking.
home to what? The feral cats? I mean, like, who do they assume they're going home to if they have that we have to teach them how to be human beings because they live with what? Sasquatch? I don't understand. Like, I don't understand that. It sounds to me like what you're saying is the underlying ideology of this is that school, and in this case, of course, government school, is the place where we're going to humanize children. Like that suddenly they woke up, I don't know how, back in 2014, 2008, like whenever this really got started in earnest. I mean, we could go back pretty far, but officially maybe at the turn of this new century. And they just said, oh my goodness, children will not become human beings unless we teach them how in our government schools.
Strangers.
All this time up until
Right.
now, no, those weren't, what were we? Like, I was a child once, I was a
Failures,
product,
apparently.
like, so I guess that's what I'm seeing is that it's this kind of like this presumption that until we teach them how to be human, we can't teach them any other things like the reading, the writing, the science. No, no, no. First, we have to prep their emotions. We have to prep them. So it sounds so
Well,
ridiculous because it is.
not only prep emotions, but instill emotions. So, where
Right.
there might not be anxiety or fear or worry, we are being
Yeah.
pushed to teach kids, how to be fearful, how to be
Right.
nervous. I mean, just one example is that there are bells going, alarms going off all the time at schools. All of these drills, and then you have all of this sort of activist messaging that is taking place. This makes kids feel uneasy. Kids like
Right.
to feel safe when they go to school. In some cases, they don't have safe environments at home. So they
Right.
do need a place where there's some stability. But when you
Yeah.
have a teacher probing a child's sexuality, you have a teacher probing whether they're pansexual or whatever sexual, or who even knows, or talking to them about perceived anxieties or
Yeah.
sexualities, etc., it's causing, this sort of incline in anxieties. They're doing it intentionally.
Right. Well, this is that the Freirean concept of generative themes. And for the audience, if you're unfamiliar with that, Paulo Freire was a Marxist educator from Brazil. He believed that teaching was a political act. That's what I was taught in graduate school. I didn't agree with it, but that comes out of pedagogy of the oppressed. And that is the foundational pedagogy of American schooling right now, that schooling is a liberatory endeavor, and that teachers are meant to be activists to liberate their students from the oppression of the
Everything.
world that they live in, of everything. And so if you start with that operating assumption or presumption, you are going to look at your students differently. Any belief they walk into school with, like, I'm a boy or I'm a girl, we have to challenge that to liberate them from that, misconception. If they walk in thinking, I believe in God, or I believe in Jesus, or I believe in Yahweh, or
They
I
go to
believe in
jail.
Allah, or whatever, we have to challenge that. So everything, you're presumed to be imprisoned or oppressed, and we have to challenge all of these things in order to liberate you, because that is our job as teachers. And this poking and prodding and looking for things that are wrong is to generate the conversation. So the kid goes, oh, is that a thing? I could be anxious? Wait, you mean this isn't a normal part of life? So what we used to be taught, which was the opposite, which is that difficult time you're having, that's life. That unfair
Not
thing that just
really.
happened, that's life.
Not really. We prior to the sort of onset of this 2020 big push and big movement for SEL, we simply didn't get into these discussions in class. We have a job to do. We're
Right.
teachers. We are supposed to be teaching children how to read and write. And hopefully,
Exactly.
in the process of reading wonderful literature and wonderful poetry and creating maybe poetry of their own, perhaps in the process, they become more, they
Sure.
develop a sense of self. Okay. But it is
Yeah.
not my job as a classroom teacher to act as every child's savior. I'm not qualified.
Right.
I'm not a therapist. They're not my children, and they're not, their
Well,
children.
it's that completely different. That's the ideology that your role as a teacher, never mind as a teacher who happens to also be a government employee. Let's like add that, that's kind of important, but I know this does happen in private school too. That it is just not the job of a person outside your family, or a person outside the chosen people chosen by your family, to do any of this. And yet here we're looking at something you sent me. It says HealthSmart, grades K5. Tell us what this is.
Okay, this is a curriculum that comes right from the U.S. Department of Education. This is something that every single parent needs to pay attention to. What is the health and so-called wellness curriculum that your school has? Because all of them have the exact same content, perhaps a different name. In this case, it's called HealthSmart. It's heavily funded by the usual players, you know who they are. And
Let me
it's
guess, Bill and Melinda Gates.
yes, actually, I think I even
Okay.
included that slide. So it's heavily weighted on a child's emotional self, understanding a child's emotion, and in the process, basically assuming that every child is afraid. Every child understands what happened in Sandy Hook. Every child understands every atrocity that's ever happened in the world, and is self-identifying with those atrocities. And so we must counsel them in the classroom with these lesson plans right here in HealthSmart, that will help them to overcome their fears and worries about all these terrible things that are occurring in the world. Sort of like that movie, The Village. I don't know if you ever remember it, about these people who
Yeah.
live in a small village and were terrified of leaving the boundaries of their home. And when they eventually do, they realize there's absolutely nothing wrong, because there is nothing wrong. And the same thing is happening in the classroom. Children are understanding that the world is divided by race, that the world is divided by economy or by politics, and that everybody is to be feared that looks like white or Christian or practices something that is not sort of pushed and advanced by this left agenda. So there's a lot of like fear mongering, it seems, built into these curriculum platforms, specifically HealthSmart, which is filled with so-called mental and emotional health, personal health and wellness, safety, lessons on safety. I mean, if a kid isn't afraid, they're going to be afraid by the time they're done with these classes on, mental health and emotional health.
Well, I want to, if I may, I want to comment on a few things I see in this writing that people might overlook. They might see it and just say, like, what's the big deal? Okay,
Right.
but it is a big deal.
Yeah.
So, for example, they say here, the CDC has identified the most important healthy behaviors for adolescents to practice by the time they graduate from high school. So the CDC has identified these, doing in what process? What was the process they used to identify those most healthy behaviors? Now, I think we'd all agree that not using drugs and not having, random sex, whatever, is probably a healthy behavior. But like, what was the process they went through? Is it simply a not doing things, or it is a to doing things? We don't know. Then at each grade range, K through second, third through fifth, the HECAT outlines the concepts students need to know. Now, according to whom? The concept students need to know. Who says? Who decided? So the CDC decided this. Were parents able to weigh in on whether their students needed to know these by the end of second grade, needed to know these by the end of fifth grade? Do the parents even agree? Were they given a chance to say, I don't think my fifth grader needs to know about safe anal sex? Okay, so like, in other words, if these are on the list, they're making a presumption. We've identified what they are. I'm not going to tell you what they are just yet, but we're going to bury it in a mountain of curriculum. We're not going to show you unless you ask for it with a FOIA and so on. And then it says, and the skills they need to be able. This is poor writing too, by the way, guys. Anybody who says need to be able to, an English teacher here is going to tell you how the to be phrases peppered all over the place is absolute crap writing. And I would argue it's so bad. And I would argue that it's meant to be bad, to trip you up and get you going, this is boring. I'm just going to put it to the side, because when we teach our students how to write, we say, don't put things like that in there. It makes the reading very cumbersome and boring, and people will not want to read it. I don't think they want us to read it.
Or maybe they're just stupid.
They could just be stupid also. But I have a tendency to believe that with people like this, they're crazy like a fox. So they're dumb like, I don't think it's quite that dumb. They have editors. Then we have these, mental emotional health, according to whom? What is, by the way, parents, I really want you to hear this question and do not let it go. Define mental and emotional health. Now define it for 30 kids in a room. Now define it for hundreds of kids in a school. And I say that intentionally because I want you to really understand that even good psychologists, good psychiatrists will tell you that they may be able to identify markers or behaviors that indicate that something might be amiss with the person, but there is no bucket of stuff or perfect healthy mental state that they can go, it looks like this, because each person is individual. People have different levels of resilience. People have different levels of stress tolerance. What one person can endure and that will lay another one low. So this also this idea that we can protect children from, mental health negative consequences is foolish, because I've met people who've grown up in foster care, passed from home to home, who've had horrible things happen and they grew up just fine. Then I've seen people who had divorced parents and they became drug addicts. So you
Again,
can't,
none of that has any place in the
and
classroom.
none of it has any place in the academics, but so like, but what I'm saying is, even if you're a parent out there going, well, we do have a mental health problem, well, school shootings, well, Sandy Hook, well, shouldn't we focus on mental health? I'm here to tell you, even if you agreed, which I don't, and I hope you all don't either, that a government school is the appropriate place to worry about a child's mental health rather than their literacy at reading and all this other thing. Even if you did agree, you can't do this. This doesn't work. This doesn't work any better than the Marxism they're so infatuated with. You
Well,
cannot
and
come up with a
we
plan.
actually see evidence of it not working. Anxiety
Yes,
levels are
thank you.
increasing, learning levels are decreasing. Schools are failing miserably. Teachers are fleeing the profession en masse. So we've never seen anything like this breakdown. And it certainly has nothing to do with parents speaking out. It has everything to do with what they're doing at the federal government and what they're pushing from the federal government down into the districts. 100%. I challenge anyone to, because it's all the same across the country. Every single school district has exactly the same curriculum as, for example, HealthSmart. This is exactly the same as, the 15 other different names that they have in different states. So if you're out there and you're a parent, look for your health and wellness curriculum or your sex ed curriculum. It'll all be there.
Ramona, look, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. That was very juvenile of me, but meh. I couldn't help it.
Kindergarten,
I was
right?
like, because that's one of the things they do is they put up that emotional thing where the kids come in and they put a post-it note when they walk in the classroom, and it's like, how are you feeling today? And one of the categories is meh. Not even kidding. So, but
Imagine.
just looking at this, like, express feelings in a healthy way. What does that mean? Now, some of us in the, might say, well, that means not yell and scream and call people names. Okay, that's what you think it means. What if it doesn't? What if it means something more than that? What if it means express that you are very deeply concerned about the climate? And if a kid goes, yeah, I'm not really remotely interested in that, doesn't bother me in any way, and can we get back to math, please? Oh, they're not expressing the appropriate feelings about the degradation of our climate. In other words, or healthy way, you cannot, because this is so vague, rule out that they've actually defined a healthy way to feel about all the subject matter areas. Because remember, this is in every single subject: math, English, science, you name it. So if you're not expressing your feelings about math and what they could perceive to be a healthy way, that could be a little mark against you. So use of self-control and impulse control strategies. Well, let's say somebody is pestering the living daylights out of you and following you everywhere and being like a stalker. Basically, this happened to my daughter when she was 10, and making your life a living hell. And you try every which way to get the kid away from you, etc. And the teachers, nobody will help, because they're supposed to all love each other and be friends with everyone because that's appropriate and healthy. So you have no way to protect your boundaries other than, let's say, yelling at the person, running away. Like you run out of options because the adults have not, their priority is everyone being friends, not protecting your individual boundaries. So you might react because you're 10, and, that's normal when someone is constantly encroaching on you to be like, get away from me. And, oh, you're not expressing yourself in a healthy way. You're not using impulse control. Like I said, if I hadn't been through this, I might look at this also and say, well, yes, that's important. We need to learn impulse control. But as a parent, don't we deal with that on a case by case basis? Don't we look at it? You have children. When your children would have some kind of outburst, wasn't your first question, what happened? Why? What's the context of this situation? And then you come in with, okay, well, in the future, here's a better way to deal with that. Not like you must control your impulses. And what I've seen from some of these lesson plans is there's a prescribed way to behave and respond across the board. And kids are not learning discernment. They're not learning how to choose to associate with people based on how their boundaries feel. And instead it's, am I doing the SEL right?
Well, that is because the teachers are not, they're not being prompted to provide proper boundaries. Majority teachers know to provide boundaries, but we had a superintendent who was telling teachers, a couple of years ago, sent out an email and told teachers to go door knocking. I mean, going to students' houses and just knocking at their door and seeing how they're doing, like well visits. Like, can you imagine nothing can go wrong there, right? Well, I mean, there are no boundaries with this as well, because there's no measurable outcome. You cannot measure emotions, or you can't measure a child's emotional state. We are not therapists, and we're not qualified to do that in a classroom setting. Because of that, there are no boundaries. And so there's all kinds of opportunity for harm that could come to a child with the wrong adult in front of them. And that is, in fact, what we're seeing.
And some of these are just, imagine telling a second grader, you need to avoid riding in a motor vehicle with someone under the influence of alcohol.
Oh,
they're in second grade. I mean, think about the burden that's a poor 7-year-old. Now, am I suggesting it's a good idea for a 7-year-old to ride in a car with someone who's under the influence? Of course
no, but it's not an appropriate discussion to have with a child when you're trying to teach them, how, to read.
Oh. And how to use safety equipment, how to avoid safety hazards at home. You're going to have a generation of neurotics.
Of course.
There's something to be said for not really knowing, not to mention this is massively insulting to parents. This is basically saying, we assume none of you have parents who give a damn about you. And by the way, because parents may simply not bring this stuff up because they don't think it's appropriate, and that doesn't mean we're not attentive parents or loving parents, we just don't think it's appropriate. That idea is also planted in the child's head that, Mommy, you never told me that the stuff under the sink could poison me and I could die. Why didn't you tell me that? Now, they may not say it to you out loud, but they might wonder in their minds, like, why is teacher telling me how to protect myself, but I'm in the house with all these poisons, or I'm in a house with all these hazards? Nobody told me.
I just don't think the kids are thinking even that far in advance, right? It's simple confusion and anxiety that ensues when you start talking to children about everything possible that can go wrong, about the boogeyman in the closet. They're going to believe that there's a boogeyman in the closet, and they're going to be anxiety stricken. And so these.
I'm glad to see this is only 3rd through 5th grade. I'm glad to see that, avoiding rape and sexual harassment only starts in 3rd grade. We wait till they're 8 to talk to them about rape.
3rd grade. Can you imagine? It gets even better, and then you couple this with the actual curriculum materials, the books that we have in English now, and the lessons in English. You couple all of this. By the time they get to the 12th grade, it's no wonder no one's reading and writing, because they're all paralyzed completely by this content.
Is that what's in here?
The inappropriate touch?
The lesson plans.
This is one of many we found in the HealthSmart curriculum. Now, people will argue, well, isn't it important for kids to know about inappropriate touch? Well, yes and no. Is this a place in school to be talking about inappropriate touch? A stranger talking to a child in a classroom? You're a teacher. You are not a family member. A family member might talk about this. You can offer this workshop to parents to talk to their children about it, but a grown-up, a stranger in front of a child, that child doesn't know the teacher that's standing in front of them. So if they're going to start talking about inappropriate touch, good touch and bad touch, and how to feel safe, and how to talk out, and how to run to your trusted adult, this is going to confuse children, and it is confusing them.
Yeah, this is, and you'll notice they have SEL connection, responsible decision making. This is such a burden to put on little kids.
Yes. puts it right on the child, right? You have to make the decision here. So not only are you causing fear and anxiety in a child as this discussion is ensuing in class, but now it's your responsibility to stop it.
And look, buy the grade set. Look, it's for sale. You can buy it.
We
So
already
this is
have it.
school.
We got it
So
for
schools
free.
are so they're giving it to the schools for free.
Well,
So
no,
so
I don't know
you
about the actual schools purchasing. We got a
the
set.
teachers got it.
Parents.
Okay.
No, I got
Parents?
some parents.
Okay.
But this exists in all schools. And yes, schools are buying the entire sets. Yes, North Kingstown, my son's school, one of the most corrupt, districts in Rhode Island, just purchased this entire curriculum platform.
Okay, so then now this is a questionnaire.
I just have to. I'm sorry. I just have to stop my
I know,
dishwasher.
I'm sorry, it's kind of small. I'm trying to make it a little bigger. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. It says, "During the past 12 months,
Okay.
how many times did you actually attempt suicide?"
Yeah. What
Wait,
kind
what?
of question is that? And of course, this is panorama, right? Do you notice that it's a panorama survey? So this is how they determine that all kids need mental health services, by these ridiculous surveys that,
How many times did you actually attempt suicide? Like, 0? Like, 0 is an
zero.
option. Can you imagine being asked that?
In all my years as an educator and a mother, I think, there are very few children, sadly, happily, that, there might have been one or two. I even don't want to talk about it, but can you imagine getting a question like that? That is not appropriate to ask a child.
Well, then
And
imagine the kid going, "What's suicide?" Now you gotta explain it to them.
yeah,
That
that
and
was,
we wonder why in the past 2 years we've seen children under the age of 10 committing suicide.
and it's
No,
it's
like a
increasing,
measurable number of children under the age
increasing.
of 10
Yeah,
committing
yeah,
suicide. This used to be, like, unheard of.
unheard of. And guess what? It's
Uh-huh.
increasing all the time.
Okay,
No
so
wonder
we've got
that,
that.
kids don't have a sense of what it might mean. They might think that committing suicide or killing themselves means that they can come back. They don't understand. This is not
If you
appropriate.
If you attempted suicide during the past 12 months, did any attempt result in an injury, poisoning, or overdose that had to be treated by a doctor or nurse? So again, even if this doesn't apply to you as a kid, you're now going, those things are possible? Like, what are there people doing that? So in other words, the idea is planted in your head. If you wanted to get some marijuana, how easy would it be for you to get some? Do you really want your kid to go find out what the answer to that is if they never thought about it before? Not to
Unbelievable.
mention, what if they answered very easy? Do you want your kid that's going to be documented in a computer, in a file associated with your child
Right.
that will now follow them around
Mm.
for the rest of their life and the government has access to it. And so anytime anybody might want to be like, "Oh, so little Johnny said it was very easy to get marijuana. Little Johnny's been asking too many questions. Little Johnny's
Let's
parents have been a
counsel
thorn in our
him.
side."
Let's get him into counseling.
Yeah,
Yeah. Here, I have a suggestion. Opt out.
you can't anymore though.
Oh, you simply refuse. Yes, you can.
Yeah, I mean, your kids have to refuse. My
Yeah.
point is, you can't the parents can no longer opt out. You can opt out of questionnaires, but good luck that they're gonna actually remember. I've heard of parents opting out and the teacher goes, "Oopsie, I forgot,"
Yes.
or they just plain ignore you like they ignore so
What's the
many
matter
things
with these
because they
people?
count on your kids not gonna come home and
Right.
tell you. So now we have to have conversations with our children, younger and younger, to say, "Now, if the teacher does this, you can't do that, and you can't answer this, and you can't answer that." Is this the kind of environment you want to send your kid into? So not only is the school saying, "Here are 57 new things to be afraid of that you never knew existed," but now the parent is saying, "Bye, honey, have a nice day. Don't remember the 10 things that you can't let anyone do to you in school." After all, your kid's going to go, "And you're leaving me here. Why?" So,
And not to
okay.
mention, the multiple fire drills and lockdown drills and this drill and that drill. I mean,
Active
school,
shooter drill.
yeah, active shooter drill, and you name it. I mean, yes, we want to put some safety gap, in place, but all of it combined, it's got to
Yep.
stop. And shame on these adults that are allowing this to happen. I just really, it's so terrible. Oh, yeah,
Here we
express.
go. Answer the questions to help yourself think about gender roles and ways people express themselves. So let me get this straight. I gotta ask this. I get stuck in language. You're an English teacher. You'll understand. I thought the child just knows from an early age. This is just who they are. Their gender is part of them. And it was misassigned at birth because the doctor made a mistake because this gendered soul is floating around and it landed itself in the wrong body. And if we don't affirm them, and it's horrible, and we're not affirming who they really are, it's who they actually are. So is it who they actually are and they're born that way, or are they expressing themselves?
Well,
Which is it?
you'll see
Or
that
is it both?
you'll see that this is geared towards middle school students. That age group is particularly prone to trying on different hats, if you will. They want to be different types of people, and they're trying on different personalities. It's perfectly normal. My children did it. There were different stages of development where they wanted, they
Sure.
colored their hair, or they dressed a certain way, or they assumed certain personalities. That's all normal, and it's very beautiful, by the way, to allow a child to progress through these different stages of development. What they're doing here is stopping them and saying, oh, this is what you are. You better start thinking. You could be another sex. And in fact, someone came home. One of my neighbors said that one of her daughter came home and was very distraught, 6th grade, came home and said to her mother, Mom, is it true that you can be my dad? And can dad be mom? Like, they don't understand these things. Why are they talking to children about this? It's so inappropriate.
Exactly. Why is accepting a range of gender roles important? Why are you putting the loaded question to middle schoolers? What if they think it's not? What if mom and dad think it's not? What if they go to Catholic church? What if a million different things? And you are leading the witness here. There's only one correct answer. It is important. There's no option for the child to say, well, it's America. So actually, technically, I don't need to accept a range of gender roles. I can reject that in my own life. What?
They don't even understand what that means.
No, they just accept. They don't know that they're being manipulated. That's the problem. Is this is manipulation. Child gets this question and they're like, let's see, what did they tell me in the lesson? Oh, right. They said it's because we have to be really nice to people and we have to be tolerant and we have to be understanding. We have to love everybody. We have to accept everybody. That's my answer. At no time, and they're also not cognitively capable, most of them, at no time are they saying, what if it's not? Like, that's higher order thinking. You
That's right.
just don't get that at 6th grade. Why is it wrong to tease or bully people based on how they express themselves? I don't know. I hate to tell you this. Maybe most of the time it's wrong, but I've met a few people in my life who kind of deserve to be teased for the way they express themselves, because the way they express themselves was rude or nasty or just like intrusive, uh distracting, etc. There were kids in my classes whose way of expressing themselves was to just speak out in the middle of class constantly, and they didn't have any kind of disability. They were just like, they just wanted to be the center of attention. And I'm not saying it's okay to bully them. Don't hear me saying that or even to mock them, but there's nothing wrong with the kids after class meeting amongst themselves and going, "Oh my God, can you believe they did this?" Like, why is that bad? They've got to blow off steam somehow. Somebody just dominated their entire class and they couldn't ask a question. And you're asking them to go, "It's totally fine. They're expressing themselves and I should never say anything negative about it." There's a measure of learning in the social and emotional realm that goes on because of the sort of like negative pushback you get from your peers, some of which is healthy. Too much is bullying. Too much is mean. We're not talking about meanness. We're
It's
talking about the person going,
how
can you
children
give it a rest and let someone else go, is a fine thing to say.
the thing is, it's how children become adults. They make
That's
mistakes.
right.
They excel
That's
in
right.
certain areas. They have problems in others. They have interpersonal relationship problems. They fight. They find friends. It's the way kids develop, and they're like taking every single aspect of childhood development and trying to control it. That's wrong, right? That's abuse.
What
Of
age is
condom.
this? What age is this for?
This is a high school 9 through 12, but still, ew, creepy. Like, what
Yeah,
teacher is going to go on a condom hunt with a student? I mean, please,
like,
be professional. What exactly? Mhm.
wait, I mean, okay, in high school, they taught us about birth control. They absolutely did. Okay. That condoms existed and they were a method of birth control. The end.
Again,
They're important.
evidence-based.
Use them. They prevent disease. The end. At no time did the teachers give us a form to fill out where we were supposed to go to the store and practice shopping for condoms, and then,
Describe them.
like, don't I have better things to do with my time? Do these kids read well enough and write well enough and do all the
No.
things well enough that this is an appropriate use of their time?
And can you imagine the problems that could arise coming from this? Why do adults assume that children of any age want to discuss the different types of condoms they can purchase, at the local drugstore, and then talk about it with their teacher in the classroom? Exactly on what planet is a condom hunt activity appropriate? And
I
what
don't
does
want
it
to
have to
know
do
the
with this?
teacher that wants to have this conversation.
I would hope there are none out there. I would hope that they're all
It's
shut in
not
the
that I'm
door
a
and thrown
prude.
in the
It's that
garbage.
I understand boundaries of children who
Right.
aren't mine.
And the best part about this particular activity and the others that come from the workbook is that the workbook is called it's part of a book called a consumable. And guess what? That consumable remains in the classroom and
Yeah.
never goes home. And now we know why.
Yes, of course we know why. I like to believe that if most parents saw this, because remember, if it's 9 through 12, that means ninth grade, you have children who are 13 years old. They
Mhm.
are not of legal age to be having sex. Okay.
Or
And
maybe you're in the 12th grade and you don't want to talk about condoms
well,
with your teacher
no, that's
in this
true. But I,
manner.
I
I
think it's
mean,
important to remind people, though, that because I've heard people say, well, it's fine in high school. And I'm like, remember that high school is a 4-year range, 2 years of which the students are not legally, I mean, they're, you know, and I really noticed this too. Name of store or agency. Are we now planting in their head they should go make a trip over to Planned Parenthood?
that's exactly right, because that is actually the next lesson. The next lesson is go sign up at Planned Parenthood. That's not a joke. I think I might have sent it in my little packet, but if I didn't, I will. And it's, once again, some people might think, oh, well, kids need to be exposed to this. They need to know. No, they don't. They actually don't.
All right. Now we have, okay, I've seen this before and it just gives me the heebie-jeebies every single time. The role play practice saying no. So now in front of your peers, in with your peers, in front of your teacher, you are going to role play having some kind of intimacy with another person. And in these scenarios, there are homosexual scenarios, there are heterosexual scenarios, there are scenarios where it's just a hookup, there are scenarios where it's a relationship, there's scenarios about using birth control. Regardless, they are taking high school students and saying, okay, so act this out like it's a little play, and like pretend that you're asking this person, to have sex, and you're asking this person to use birth control, and you're asking this person for anal sex, and you're asking this person. Can you imagine being the student who goes, I don't want to do any of this. I am not participating in this activity. I refuse to do it.
I don't
Are
know
they
any
going to
students that would enjoy this activity. It's
no? And
strange
yet,
and
do
bizarre.
they? And yet, which is going to be more stressful for them? Doing the activity or imagining that they're the only student who doesn't want to do the activity and then having to say, I'm not doing the activity. So no matter how you slice it, it comes up completely insane. And I just I just think that putting students into a position where they're either feeling awkward because of what they're doing or feeling awkward because they don't want to do it, or worse, those few students are like, this is all fine with me. What kind of an example are they setting for the others? I thought the whole point was to discourage, even though we're not going to do abstinence only, we're not going to talk about, I still thought that we wanted this kind of thing to be, seriously contemplated, and ideally, that people would wait and students would not be in ninth grade or 10th grade, wanting to engage in some of these activities. When you're constantly talking about it and normalizing it and making it, like we just have these conversations randomly about,
I don't think
things.
they'll ever be normalized. I think what
What
happens is
example does
that
that set?
it contributes to the overall, emotional
I'm not
breakdown
talking to
of
you,
our
Siri.
children, right? It's contributing
Yeah.
to the overall emotional breakdown, or the sort of theft of their, innocence and their developmental stages. It's horrible what's happening. They're hijacking these children in school.
And then we're judging. So these little actors in the class who have to act at these roles are going to be evaluated by their peers. Oh, how well did they do? I'm sure that doesn't have any repercussions if someday one of the boys gets accused of something and, "Oh, well, in that role play in our class, I remember that he didn't resist the pressure, but, or he resisted the, pushback from the girl that he was pressuring in the role playing." I mean, my point is I just think there's
Nothing.
nothing good about this. I don't
Zero.
see any positive about this. Parents can do a fine job of teaching their sons not to pressure girls to have sex. And parents of girls can do a fine job teaching their girls to resist that pressure. And those who don't do a fine job, that is sad, and I feel bad about that, but it is still not the job of school teachers to remedy that. They are not parents, and their job is not to come in and replace parents. Their job is to be teachers. And this is not teaching, this is parenting, and it's really actually very bad parenting because even good parents don't do this. We don't role play with our
No,
children.
I can't imagine saying to my, 2 girls, 2 boys, "Okay, now, kids, we're gonna role play a scenario where you have to talk about your sexuality, to your brother or whatever, or vice versa, or to invite some friends over and let's do this." I would be arrested, and rightly so, right? So why are they getting away with this? Who vetted these materials? No one
I
did
just
that.
think this implants so many weird expectations. It also, the thing that I noticed, we know statistically that fewer people are dating. Like the chart from Gen X, 18-year-old, most 18-year-olds have been on at least a date. That tanked. A minority of 18-year-olds in America have been on a date.
Isn't that
Now
sad?
that does it's so sad. But if this is what you make it
Yeah.
sound like,
Well,
or
no,
you make it see, who would want to do it?
what it is that they're sort of making sex casual. Relationships are casual. They come, they go. You can decide whatever you want. You can try different, types of sexuality. They're making it really casual, and they're destroying, these sort of healthy attitudes about sex and healthy boundaries. That's what these lessons are doing, even though they profess to do the opposite.
Yep, exactly. I hesitate, but here I go.
Yeah. Nice. These
What?
are images, middle school. Now, that's not an image from Queer Ducks, but that's one of the books at the high, you
What
just,
is this?
this is from, I believe, Flamer. This is, of course, now the librarian at our school defended it because she said that, oh, well, kids need to learn that there are predators out there and how to deal with them. No, they
No, not
don't.
no, they
No, they
don't.
don't. They
This
don't
is
need to see that.
terrifying. This
Yeah,
is terrifying.
terrifying.
No,
It
kids,
terrifies me.
that is why I paused on kids need to learn. Parents, you're hearing that every single day now. Well, kids need to learn. You need to stop people in their tracks and say, says who? According to whom, and how do you know? And you didn't ask me. You didn't ask me what if I agree that my kids need to learn this. Back when I thought when you told me kids need to learn to read, I was with you. Kids need to learn math, I was with you. Kids need to learn science, I was with you. We even went with you with kids need to know where babies come from by a certain age because they might accidentally do dumb stuff that causes a baby. We went along with that for years. Now you want to get to, well, kids need to learn that people get raped by their uncle. No, they don't. They could go their whole flipping lives. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know. I personally did not know that this was a thing that happened until I was at least in college.
Can you imagine a child that has been raped or traumatized in any way, shape, or form
And
stumbling
they
across this
see this
book,
book.
seeing this book? They're re-traumatized, and if they're not re-traumatized, they're traumatized. This is exactly why kids are having emotional breakdowns. If you are a parent and watching this and maybe afraid to speak out and say that your child is suffering, know that there are many, many, many parents across the country currently that are sharing the same feelings. And that is a great concern that their children are seeing this kind of imagery when they go to school.
What the actual, and this is in a school, this book.
Yes.
So, God, this is Flamer, by
Flamer.
the way, guys. I can't look at that anymore.
There's
So,
worse.
so when parents and people from Moms for Liberty and so forth are trying to get these things pulled out of schools, and people say, well, they're book banning. This is what we're talking about.
That's right.
It's not To Kill a Mockingbird. Actually,
Yeah.
those are leftists pulling that out. It's not Shakespeare. Again, say it's too white. They're lying to you. Randy Weingarten is standing there with books
He's a
that have
liar.
schools, not by Moms for Liberty, but by people
Right.
on the left because of cultural reasons, like, they're too classic, or they're too white, or they're too white savior complex of Atticus Finch, whatever. That was in Burbank, California a couple years ago. It was not Moms for Liberty. This is what parents are talking about. And when they say, well, it's been over 1,000 titles, because you know why? There is an entire industry now of
Well,
pumping out these kinds of books,
right.
one a month, and with these themes, LGBTQ themes, all these themes about what's going on, all the stuff. So they put them in the schools, they generate the themes for the kids and the teachers to talk about. So the teachers have license to steal and have these intimate conversations with your children and keep secrets from you. And then when you go and protest, they can go, and there's just hundreds of titles. They don't want them. Like, interestingly, they all are obsessed with sex and very specific graphic details thereof. Why is that you are so interested in suddenly pumping all this junk into the schools?
Well, we know why adults would be interested in that.
Oh my God.
And
See?
see this kind of imagery in kindergarten, right? Like you could say, well, what's wrong with this? It's just a little diagram of a child. This is called good touch, bad touch, or a child has to identify what's good or bad. Notice they're all adults. There are no normal like children playing. And by the way, why would you even have an activity like that? Children know what good, what's when something's positive or safe. They don't need to see a weird, creepy, cartoon of a man, and doing strange things where they have to sit on the man's lap or whatever. That's like so bizarre. It's like so creepy. Am I wrong to think that?
No, you're not wrong. It's incredibly creepy. And again, even if I didn't think it were creepy, which I do think it's creepy, it is not the job of the school. So, like, I mean,
Yeah.
this is one could, as you said, I could imagine a parent pulling their kid aside if you felt your child was at risk. But remember, the people they're at most risk of are the people they spend the most time with. Those would be the people in school. Does
Oh,
a week go by that we don't hear about children who are being abused by someone in the school?
yeah, it was
And
going
and
on for
yet,
years at my son's school, and it goes on quite a bit. It happens more frequently than we realize. Currently in North Kingstown, there was a coach, a football coach that was doing naked fat tests on children. Now he's been arrested, and he's going to have to go to court to defend himself. But this went on for years, and teachers ignored this going on. They just sort of closed their eyes. Nobody said anything. Everybody protected him, and including the superintendent of schools, who had to resign over this, and the entire school board that is now being sued because of this. But really, this does go on. There are pedophiles, there are very sick people, and this sort of boundaryless, lesson plan, these sorts of boundaryless book platforms are giving them license to act out their fantasies.
well, the other thing is, every single one of these scenarios is planting the seed in a child's mind that these scenarios are normal, the descriptions of these people are normal, and like inquiring about or thinking about other people's relationships, sexuality, body parts, partnerships, sex, active status, etc., is completely normal. And another thing I never did as a child, I never sat there and spent more than, unless it was someone I was friends with or someone I had a crush on. I certainly wasn't sitting there going around the room of every kid in my class and going, well, that person is this stat, and that person is this identity, and that person is this. And I really didn't do that. It's mentally and emotionally violating the boundaries of everyone involved. Like the child who has to now think about this stuff, the child is now encouraged to think about other people in these ways when they have other business to attend to, like reading, writing, math, etc. And here we go, she doesn't have a partner right now. She's 16. She's not really supposed to have a partner. Okay, that's not, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's like, well, that's this normal thing. And she has a partner now. She doesn't have a partner. They're planting these seeds that, well, last weekend while hanging out, they have a crush and this, and they're making these kids feel like you're supposed to have these relationships.
Right, and multiple and many different types of relationships, very dangerous. If you go back to the safe, can we look at the safe and unsafe again, just really, really quickly?
Ugh,
A
so
little
gross.
child looking at that in kindergarten, what message is going to be sent? Not that if it's
Grown-ups
safe
are
or unsafe,
scary.
but that
Grown-ups are
adults
dangerous.
hugging you and sitting on an adult's lap might be okay, because there's nothing there that implies safe or unsafe. What that does is provide messaging to a child that, getting close
Yeah,
to a grown up is okay. That's really what that is all about.
exactly.
Right.
And this I don't think a kindergartner understands that these little lines over the kid's head, maybe this expression on the face,
Yeah, I'm
but
afraid of
this could be
knowing
mom
that.
getting
Yeah,
you ready for your bath.
it's awful.
I mean, this is supposed to signify that this is bad. This person is saying shush. Maybe it's dad and the kid just fell and broke his arm and he's been screaming and the baby's asleep. I mean, like they're assuming so much about the interpretation of this. So to your point, this could just as easily be teaching that this ultra creepy old man touching this little boy is perfectly fine. I mean, what's wrong with that? He looks happy. The guy's going, "Want a piece of cake?" You know what I
Yeah, it's like
hear in
the
my
ice cream
head?
truck man. Remember those stories?
Well, what I
Yes.
see this guy is I hear the guy in Family Guy where he's like, with that voice, it's like, "Chris, come over here." Like, anyway, this
I
is
don't mean
not
to
teaching
laugh,
what they
but
think it's teaching.
what else are we gonna do?
I don't
Just
know, but can I just remind
scream.
everyone that HealthSmart is a product of the federal government?
Yeah.
Can I just remind I just wanna throw that back out there in case anyone forgot.
Mhm. Yeah, they
The
think they're so
CDC.
clever. They thought we wouldn't notice, you know?
Right, the people who brought us the wonderful world of, what injections. Um, so moving right along, we have what is this charming thing? Oh, this is more. Answer the questions to help yourself think about gender roles and ways people express. So we kind of looked at one of these, and then we have J's story, B's story, K's story, T's story. T has always liked to wear clothes that are different. Today at lunch, some kids started teasing T in a really mean way. "I can't believe you dress like that," one of them said. "Why can't you just be normal?" All the other kids started laughing. Do you think T is a boy or a girl, or is it unclear and why? I don't know that is I what? Like, why are we even having this conversation?
Why are they there were kids running around the school, talking about how they wanted to be a boy, wanted to be a girl, they were pansexual. It's like, in what world do little children have these sorts of thoughts?
I
You know?
They don't. They're put there by
Oh,
teachers.
yes.
Now,
Safe zone
again,
parents.
this isn't subliminal at all. We
Mm-mm.
have the rainbow and safe zone in the
Oh, this
same
bad
place.
organization. Very bad, and it's
Wow.
almost in every school, and I think medical offices too. If you see that safe zone sign, understand this, it is not safe in that area, wherever that is.
That
Doctor's
is
office,
basically
school,
announcing, "We will groom your children behind your back and not
uh,
tell you."
or
Uh,
they will create hatred towards Christian children and white children for sure, because there are plenty of
yeah,
lessons that are anti-white, and I think I might have even included a couple, and they're anti-Christian specifically, and they refer to white Christians as white supremacists. There we go. There's another image for a kindergartner, and look at that. Look where the eyes are. Look at the eye. What is this image
what wait,
suggesting?
what? What?
Exactly.
What?
Right.
Why are the eye
Exactly.
level at the dude's crotch?
Kindergarten. What child jumps like that, and what adult is sticking their pelvis into the child's face? I don't understand this.
It
What purpose does this show? This Health Smart
I
wellness
can't.
slide.
I can't. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
How HealthSmart supports SEL. So, again, if you're wondering, well, like, "Well, what does this all have to do with SEL?" There is.
nothing.
And they're telling us health education is a natural fit for social and emotional learning.
Yeah,
HealthSmart addresses the core SEL
if you're
competencies
a you know
for
what.
curriculum, self-awareness. Oh, my body. Let's think about every crevice of my body and all of the things and the ways it could be touched, good, bad, and different by
Oh,
all the different people who could possibly touch it and all the conversations I could possibly have about them touching it.
I'm getting
So
anxiety stricken just
I
listening to
couldn't
this.
do this.
And
I could not be a teacher. If somebody came to me and said, "You have to teach this," I'd be like,
why they're
I quit.
leaving?
I can't, I couldn't do
Why
it.
they're leaving?
The
Me.
emotional mental health, in middle school, again, presuming that the thing that is standing between middle school students and high school students and Mental wellness is not enough sex talk. That's what it was. That's the reason the kids were disturbed, is they didn't have their teachers doing enough role playing about asking to
I'm
have
so
anal sex with their classmates.
sorry.
If
I'm sorry.
only they had done that when we were children, we would not have seen therapists in our, 20s and 30s.
Oh, no.
That was the reason. Um, then we go to, what is this charming thing? Dealing with inappropriate. This is more dealing with inappropriate touch.
Yeah, there's hundreds and
This,
hundreds. I mean, poor kids are, oh,
oh my God. Being emotionally healthy. I wish I could see this as students consider what it means to be healthy and are introduced to the idea of different dimensions of health. Why?
why
Again,
this
why?
way?
I
Why?
was an adult before I ever
Why?
heard the expression mental health.
And you still don't know, not until you're much older do you understand the meaning of that. Like, who are these adults and why do they
They
think
don't
they're qualified
understand the
to
meaning.
teach
As I
this?
said, doctors still don't really know what all the components are I mean, they know that environment plays a big role. They know that heredity can play a role in chemical imbalances and certain kinds of mental illnesses.
Still
They
not
know
a place for
trauma plays a role. So
classroom.
they know all these things are certainly correlated with
Right.
certain kinds of emotional disturbance and behavior issues, but they don't 100% know how all of those layers interact with each other in a given individual to produce the illness that is manifest in either their behavior or their thoughts about themselves or suicidal ideation.
Certainly not
They,
if you're an English teacher or a
thank
history
you.
teacher.
And
They, right?
if there's one thing you cannot do as a school teacher and even as a therapist, is you can't take a child and prevent these outcomes. Can't be done.
No,
Can't be
you
done.
teach
If
them
somebody
towards
had
it.
swooped in when I was 9 years old and said, "Oh, there's trauma in your home because your mom just left and you're left with your dad and your dad's, leaving you as a latchkey kid and you're not getting a lot of attention, whatever. Let's like talk about your feelings all the time." And like, you know what helped me deal with that trauma of, my parents split up and it was pretty ugly and it was bad and my mom was pretty abusive before she left and everything? Leaving the house every day, riding my bicycle all over town with my friends and hanging out and playing kickball and just being outside in the fresh air and the sunshine and not being home a lot and just like being with my friends. Whenever that flip, I felt like it, that and reading books. Between those two things, and I just had my little way to get out of my head and get out of my house and get out of this problem and distances myself from it, was all the therapy that I personally needed. Now take another kid in the exact same scenario and they might have had a different reaction. In fact, you could, because I had a sister. She reacted differently than I did. Also was fine, but like differently. Even kids in the same house undergoing the same trauma, it is not a guarantee. We act like if a kid has adverse childhood experiences, they are just guaranteed to be effed up for life, man.
And don't you think
That's
that anybody who
not
goes through
true.
any sort of difficulty at home, and there are many kids who are traumatized and maybe do need a calm environment. The last thing they need is to go to school and have their classmates evaluate their sexual activity, sexual thoughts, their drug use, their suicidal thoughts, or have a grown-up in the classroom talk about these very bizarre issues. Maybe the classroom and school can be a safe place, for that child if we
It
only bring
certainly
back
can. It can be a
boundaries.
haven if you are focused on things that are going to make the child more competent and capable of surviving in the world, which includes those, academic skills and even the thinking skills. The thinking skills is you have power in your own brain to think and solve problems. You have power in your own brain to
Right.
imagine a better life for yourself. This gets kids, these kinds of exercises pulls kids into it, like almost permanently affixes them to a false present. So it's not their present, it's imaginary presence of other people, but then gets them stuck there. There's no positive future imagination. There's no dreaming. There's no
There's no
aspiring.
universal the one thing that kids are
There's
being robbed,
nothing.
apart from being robbed from their innocence and their own natural stages of development, apart from that, they're being robbed of this sort of understanding that there is a universal connection. There is a greater connection between all children in the world, in all cultures, in all time, at all times in history, throughout history. They're being robbed of that understanding. Right? So
Well,
there's a
and
sense
they're
of isolation that
yeah.
fits that sort of
And they're breaking their bodies now into parts, about their body parts and whatnot. Okay, looks like discuss and write.
Like
This
I'm
was
hearing
Romeo and
bells,
Juliet.
alarms.
Romeo refers to himself as effeminate and blames his reluctance to fight on his relationship with Juliet. What point is Shakespeare making about gender?
That's right.
I'm
So
sorry, what?
even great literature has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by one of those, the talking points, the sort of woke talking points. Who gives a why is this being allowed? That a great work of literature cannot stand on its own and teach and inform children about the universe, about injustices, about trauma, about difficulties. Instead, they have to inject their woke politics into one of the greatest plays that, by the way, if it's taught right, the majority of kids will love. That's my experience anyway. They love the language. They love playing with the language. They love the themes. Kids can relate to the many different themes. Oh, but not now because there's only one theme. And that maybe that theme is that Romeo's really gay. Like, where are they getting the right to do this?
And now we're getting deep into Romeo's anger. We're getting into anger. Let's get into anger and the angry feelings. Are we trying to uplift children so they aspire to greatness? They're aspired or to greatness in their own small way. It doesn't have to be like greatness, but just I aspire to be better tomorrow than I was today. Or do we want to get them mired in all these negative emotions, fear,
But it's not just
paranoia,
negative emotions.
neuroses?
They're actually lying to children. Romeo and Juliet is not about those things. This is invention. They've injected this sort of political ideology into the story of Romeo and Juliet, and they've
Guys,
hijacked it. The Handmaid's Tale. It's a great
graphic
novel.
novel. Okay, never mind that we're not letting kids use their imagination at all. Like, I wouldn't want my high school student reading The Handmaid's Tale without the graphic novel. But when you imagine it for them and they can't even protect themselves, like you said about being triggered, what if somebody had been raped or abused? This would be so incredibly triggering. This would be
Again,
absolutely abusive
consider
to put in front of a kid.
Right. Consider the picture in Flamers and consider the picture in Genderqueer and the many other books, because those aren't the only ones, but there's hundreds of these books, right? Look at, here's a young girl. She's being tied up. She's being raped. The kids are going to go right to the pictures and think that The Handmaid's Tale is just about that. It's not. There are multiple different themes in The Handmaid's Tale. It's actually a really good novel, not appropriate for 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, maybe appropriate for an advanced 12th grade, but it has to be taught carefully. And specifically, this rape scene is one chapter and one part of The Handmaid's Tale. They make it seem like in this novel, in this graphic novel, that really the book is all about young women being raped. And it's all like these gross images. I think I included one of the images was of a man raping a young girl. Like, how embarrassing and disgusting and traumatizing for a young girl, especially if a child's been raped in some way. And
This
notice
one,
the way
you've got
she's
like an
dressed.
old
I don't
man.
recall Margaret Atwood including those sorts of stockings in the novel, okay? Or that outfit. That was never included. And
No.
look at that. Why is that
That
okay?
is so disturbing. And again, if you're wondering, like, well, what does that have to do with SEL? Well, imagine this. You're in your health class or they teach you all this other stuff. Then you come into English class and
Thank you.
we're now reinforcing all that stuff about
Mhm.
rape, about touching, about inappropriate touching, appropriate touching, about role playing with
Correct.
sex. And now we're going to read a graphic novel that features graphic visuals of that same kind of stuff. And aren't you as a kid going to get the message that the adult world is violent,
Very
scary,
violent.
full of sex and
Yeah.
rape and so on? And if you're a girl who finds that, who's nervous about any of that, also most young girls today are all too aware of porn because a lot of the boys are seeing it because of the internet and they're terrified. They're absolutely terrified. They think to themselves, like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I don't
And now
look
they
like
go to
that.
school and
Nobody
they're
looks like
scared.
that. Even those people don't look like that. That's all surgical enhancement. And so they're terrified. None of this, aligns with their reality or their hopes or their dreams. And I got to believe it's incredibly destabilizing. And then we have over here, as you pointed out the other
Yeah.
day, we've got these
This is an
identify your
important picture to show and to focus on for a moment because it's very, very subtle. And I got a lot of pushback from some of the teachers at my local school. My kids went to this school, and one of the teachers said, "Oh, it's only an art project." And of course I said, "No, it's not. It's from that Sandy Hook welcoming curriculum." And of course, what do we learn about the Sandy Hook welcoming curriculum, or whatever they call it, Sandy Hook? They basically, CASEL has taken, this SEL platform has taken the Sandy Hook tragedy, and they've now used it to advance their own
Well,
SEL
of course
agenda.
they have, because who's going to possibly criticize
Right.
anything to do with Sandy Hook?
Right, exactly. And so the argument is that, oh, but these are kids just putting hearts on body parts. But look at where the level, look at the eye level of where these cutouts of adults are, or children, or whatever it is, on the wall. And look where the hearts are. There's no discussion of why those hearts are going there, and who cut those hearts out, and what this activity is all about. And if it is about Sandy Hook, then shame on that school, Melrose Avenue School here in Jamestown. Shame on them for teaching little children, kindergartners, about such a horrible, horrible tragedy. And shame on CASEL for sort of interweaving and hijacking the Sandy Hook tragedy to suit their SEL fraud.
No kindergartner should be taught that a bunch of other kindergartners got shot and killed.
No, but here, this is what
They don't need to know that.
First
They
week of
could, they
school.
don't,
Yeah.
that makes me furious. And then here we have, this is Sandy Hook Promise. Okay, start with hello. Digital program that includes interactive storybook, videos, activities, and projects. You'll also have access to full curriculum aligned to the CASEL 5 social emotional, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Register your school, 6 through 12. It's an age-appropriate version of, I don't even know what, it builds a culture of inclusivity. No, but we already established, no, it doesn't, because it's not inclusive if you're a person who doesn't want to do this.
Right. That's
and
right.
that is, you're excluded. Oh, wow. Well, if a person is, when a person is not limited in sexual choice for biological sex, gender, or gender identity, they're pansexual.
Right. These are posters that were all over a school. I can't say which.
And this is a standard. This looks like a standard.
Yeah. Oh,
If
that's
they're
a standard.
defining sexual health, folks, this is a standard. That's what they look like when you talk about what the standards say. Identify ways to prevent pregnancy, including not having sex and effective use of. Fine, we're in agreement. Describe ways sexually active people can reduce the risk of HIV. That's fine. Identify solo, vaginal, anal, and oral sex along with possible outcomes of each. Nope, totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Any
See,
sex,
what they're not teaching,
any
and it's hard to show
to disease. Period.
in
Full
this
stop.
in this particular curriculum. I just want to point out, they're not telling children, they're teaching anal sex as an alternative to regular sex. I mean, how dare they, right? But they're not telling young girls and boys that they could get, life-threatening diseases from anal sex. They're not sharing that. They could, be wearing adult diapers for the rest of their lives. They're not sharing that information either. Oh no, they're just pushing it in the classroom. So guess what? They're seeing a rise in, all kinds of health problems associated with anal sex in very young children. Why is that? Because it's being pushed as a normal part of sexual exploration for kids.
And imagine you're the person who doesn't want to do it, but it's been taught in school like it's just another kind of sex. And so other kids, or maybe somebody you're dating and, as a senior in high school or something like that, or God forbid younger, is acting like, what kind of a weirdo prude you are that you don't want to do this. And so how many kids are getting pressured, and they went, oh, don't let somebody pressure you.
A lot,
which is going to take precedence. Which is going to take precedence. This is why I say you cannot teach that. Like, there's certain things you just can't predict how it's going to work, or how you can't protect somebody from all the things, because in one person they might go, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, I'm not going to pressure you. Okay, that's fabulous. They might get that message. Another couple, the governors, look, they said anal sex is totally normal and fine. And what's wrong with you? You don't want to do it. Are you some kind of prude? Blah, 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 blah. Are you one of those blah, 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 blah? And then the kid, maybe does it anyway. And, which took precedence. So I don't buy it. I don't buy that these people are all becoming these perfectly sensitive children who are like, oh, I would never pressure you to do this thing that was presented to us as completely normal.
No, this isn't about abstinence and choice. This is about, they're advancing this. And I'll tell you, the lesson that it comes with shows a picture of a young man and a young woman sitting together and discuss, and clearly they're, engaged in some sort of conversation about anal sex. And it doesn't look like a negative thing. It doesn't look like they're talking about abstinence. It's just, they're promoting it.
Yeah. hundreds of independent studies consistently demonstrate social emotional learning benefits students. This is a flagrant lie. Flagrant lie. Okay, independent studies. Really? I've yet to find them. I've
That's
yet to
right.
find that they're either independent or that they say what they claim they say.
This means nothing.
This
What
is a
this
lie.
slide means nothing. And teachers go to professional development sessions, and they have these very high-paid consultants that say this and point to these slides, and everybody nods their head as though they're learning something revolutionary. They're really, it's the most ridiculous thing. I mean, read academics, mental health, skill development, school climate. What does that mean?
Well, they're
Nothing.
saying they demonstrate benefits, but the presumption is, or the person reading this is supposed to believe that they benefit, they improve academics, they improve mental health, they improve skills development, they improve school climate. Y'all, you don't need to have done any
There's a
research.
measurable component to this. There isn't one. This is
No,
all just nonsense.
there isn't one, but anecdotally, what do we know? Scores are lower than ever.
That's right.
Academic scores are lower than ever. Mental health, off the charts numbers of kids committing suicide. It's way up. Okay, mental health, distress, anxiety, ROGD, kids trying to transition and take drugs, etc. These are off the charts. They've increased.
That's
So
right.
if again, correlation isn't causation, but we have sharp rise in SEL, sharp rise in gender confusion. No connection there, I'm sure. No, of
Right.
course not. Whatever.
So skills development, all of
What
those
skills?
things, nothing. They're not learning any
Being an
skills.
activist, being a whiny, neurotic,
Right.
temper tantrum throwing brat?
Carrying
I
a
don't know.
bullhorn. That's a
School
skill,
climate,
apparently.
beatings, rape in the bathroom, kids suing people. I mean, is
Parents
that a
flipping
great school
out. Yeah,
climate?
school climate. Parents furious at school board meetings. Teachers like me getting, well, we can't go into that, but yeah, I mean, well, we know what's going on in the school climate. Chaos.
Yeah. And then they're always talking about being safe. This lesson explores the idea of being safe.
And feeling good.
Students define what being safe means.
Finding a trusted
Safety.
adult. We forgot that one. Sorry.
Finding a trusted, I'm sure there's plenty who want to volunteer for that job.
Yeah.
And many
Yeah.
of them have blue hair.
Trusted adult. Forget your mom and dad. Go to the trusted adult every Thursday.
Oh, but while we're at it, let's teach them about heterosexual privilege and Christian privilege and male privilege, because SEL. How school-based staff can support youth mental health. What part of school mental health is supported when we teach a kid, most of whom are heterosexual, that they have privilege, which by definition means they're oppressed.
I don't understand the correlation between mental health and shaming children and dividing children by the color of their skin, or weaponizing children, or turning them into activists. I don't understand that. Do you?
No, I really don't. Actually, I really don't. And then it's estimated that 45.9% of adolescents in the United States have experienced poor mental health conditions at some point in their life. So at some point, define poor mental health conditions. I was sad one day. I was depressed. I was bullied. Like, what are we talking about? We don't know. That could be any, if you include all the things, like I got a poor grade and I cried all day, yes, all kids have experienced some kind of mental health distress. But the reality is that it is still a minority of children who organically have mental health problems. Every single one of these kids who's manifesting anxiety and depression is having it foisted on them.
Yeah, I don't think we need to call them mental health problems, okay? They're normal stages of development. Every child goes through normal stages of development. That includes anxiety, that includes questioning who they are, etc. It's not a mental health breakdown. And I hate that term. And I think we should just stop using it. We should stop buying into their terminology, because they're made up terms. It's made up, outcomes. And all of this is complete, fabrication.
And it's always centered outside the school. It's always, and what I mean by that is the source of the distress is always somewhere else. You notice they never believe or even discuss the possibility that the program they're doing is the source of the anxiety. They never even contemplate the possibility that feeling incompetent at reading is a source of anxiety. Or if you're gifted, and I recorded a show today with Lisa Johnson that I'm releasing tomorrow about the anxiety that is exacerbated for gifted kids when their needs aren't met, that if you're not affirmed in your giftedness and you're left in the corner to just languish because nobody's bothering with your academics, how that can create anxiety. And then what? They come in
And
and
it
go, oh,
does.
would you like some pills? So, but they never own it. They never say, maybe we're causing some of these problems. We ever notice in the summertime suicides go down?
Well,
You ever notice?
at some point, they're going to have to face the fact that none of these curriculum platforms are working. In fact, they're causing harm. The data shows everything is falling apart in K through 12 education. And it has nothing to do with Moms for Liberty. It has nothing to do with book burners or school choice.
No, it doesn't. This is madness. That they think they can teach you empathy and compassion. You know how children learn empathy and compassion? It's modeled. And the first way that it's modeled to them is that it's shown to them. And it's shown to them by
By
the
being
adults in their
respectful.
lives being
That's right.
respectful of their boundaries and meeting their needs when asked to. So a baby cries, you go to the baby, you feed the baby, you change the baby's diaper, you've met their needs. It's asking you, what? You meet their needs. Okay. Kid in school not approaching you and asking for help is you leave them alone, you're meeting their needs. You're meeting their needs. Okay. So proactively poking around in a kid's head is not meeting their needs. It's trying to poke around in a kid's head. You are being disrespectful. You're not showing the child any empathy whatsoever. You're disregarding how that child may feel about you poking around in their emotions and their relationship with their parents and their relationship with their peers and their beliefs about their body and every other thing. You are not demonstrating empathy, so they're not going to learn empathy. You've weaponized empathy.
That's correct. Yeah.
So this is madness. And it just goes on and on. Research confirms lies. This is a lie.
Yes. And
Long-term
teachers
benefits.
sit
Where are
in
they?
professional development session after session and nod their heads and go, oh, yes, this is all good. It must be true. I mean, but it's none of this is based on any fact or any real data or any real proof of success. None of it
No.
at all.
No. And I wanted to bring something up because we just saw in this picture, I want everyone to notice this wheel. Please notice this little wheel. Okay. And now I'm going to show you something else. Oh, not this one, this one. Okay. So UNESCO, notice there's a little wheel up in here in the corner. And SGG, you've probably seen the SGG rainbow wheel. Well, this is all connected. This is
Yes.
all connected. So
I wasn't
here's,
going to go there.
I'm going there.
Okay.
I'm going there. SEL, because the title of the show is SEL harming kids. SEL for SDGs. Now, James posted this, and why social emotional learning is necessary to achieve the sustainable development goals. So is this about your child's mental health? Is this about improving academic outcomes? Is this about the things that you're being told it's about?
No.
Or is it about achieving SDG goals? And if you don't know what SDG goals are, I would highly encourage you to go look at what they are because you didn't ask for them.
Simplify it. They're producing workers and they don't want them connected to their families.
Now, I'm going to read because I can't really paraphrase this, and it needs to be heard for the horror that it is. Okay.
Mm.
The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are not necessarily a set of consistent objectives, but rather a series of potentially conflicting goals. From the perspective of the development agent, these conflicting objectives entail inconsistencies in actions and antecedents needed to attain the SDGs. For example, eradicating poverty, a societal objective, might entail, at least in the short term, working the self to the point of compromising personal well-being. Another SDG, another clear example, another SDG. So compromising personal well-being, another SDG. Did you hear that, folks?
Yes, it's called
Compromising
marxism.
personal well-being is a sustainable goal. Let's continue.
Well, there it is, right there.
Another clear example of such conflicts is the slow progress or even resistance to climate change policies because of the relationship across work choice, economic growth, and climate change. Oh, you pesky people making those wrong work choices. Thus, attainment of these goals may necessitate a balancing act. Development agents, that would be the teachers and the other people implementing these programs, may consider multiple options and make trade-offs. Dissonance and the SDGs. At the level of the individual and social collectives,
Oh,
these trade-offs and SDGs will be quite taxing because the conflicting goals are, in effect, inconsistent cognitions, generally referred to as cognitive dissonance or dissonance. According to dissonance theory, one of the most tried and tested theories in the behavioral sciences, this is dog training. I'm sorry, I had to say it.
we have to have a sense of humor about it because it is.
Inconsistent cognitions evokes aversive arousal state. We're going to violate their boundaries and stimulate aversive arousal state that leads to attitudes and social psychological processes. Inconsistency among cognitions, a more rational phenomenon referred to as cognitive discrepancy, and the unpleasant emotional and motivational state that arises from holding two contradictory cognitions, referred to as dissonance. Dissonance is unpleasant. The
In
aversive
other
arousal
words,
state is because
shut up. In other
the
words, be
unpleasant
quiet.
emotive state of dissonance motivates attitude changes or engagements in other dissonance reduction processes. We're going to brainwash your children. We're going to make them very, very, very uncomfortable to the point where they're going to take aversive action to avoid feeling uncomfortable.
And
And
that's normal.
therefore, their attitude towards, being touched inappropriately or anal sex with total strangers, or, things like not having a gender at all or not liking their parents or basically going to war with their parents over climate change will certainly be more amenable to them because they're going to want to avoid all that dissonance they're feeling in the school they have to attend for 13 straight years, 8 hours a day. Sorry.
I think we answered the question.
What was the title of our show again?
Yes.
I mean, we can keep going. It's like, for example, it has been widely demonstrated that following a dissonance triggered decision, people alter their attitudes to be more consistent with their choices. I avoided dissonance. I'm going to make more choices that avoid dissonance.
And
Isn't that great?
Look out.
This is just fancy language around how to brainwash people.
Right.
This is literally when the behaviorists took dogs and they put them in a pen and they wanted to see, if they could condition them to stop leaving this, like jumping over the edge of the pen and whatever, what they would do to get food. So they put them in these pens, and after a while, when they would get a shock, just like we do with invisible fence, when they get a shock from crossing over the boundary, they wouldn't cross the boundary even when there's no walls. There was no wall, and the dogs would just sit there and wait to be delivered their food or be delivered whatever, and they would. And you had behaviorists like Seligman was the guy who came up with the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to help address this problem in humans, because human beings will condition ourselves to avoid negative stimuli to the point of becoming paranoid, to the point of overgeneralizing negative stimuli where we don't take risks, we don't do anything, we ruminate, we think about bad things all the time, you get terribly depressed, you can become suicidal, and it's all imaginary, it's not real. So cognitive behavioral therapy grounds you in reason and the here and now and reality. You challenge your cognitive distortions, and you don't imagine an invisible electric fence that you can't cross. You go, that's not there. I'm going to walk out and do what I need to do. And you get on with your life and you have a happy life. They are literally telling you, we need them to change their attitudes about selecting the wrong jobs because climate change. We need to have them change their attitudes so they can help us fight poverty, because that's a societal goal that we've decided. You parents didn't jump on board with that. You want to avoid poverty in your own family. But they've decided it's a collective societal goal over at UNESCO, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Did you vote for this?
Really?
Did you vote for this? No. And then, of course, what do we care about? We help about helping the development agents. The sustainable development, the agents of the sustainable development, that's most important. In contrast, because dissonance prompts development agents to reflect on their values and other behavioral antecedents and to self-regulate the unpleasant emotive state, it is a necessary aspect of measured, deliberative, sustainable development actions because it obligates the development agent to weigh options and make decisions. We're gonna nudge you. By the way, folks, look for the word nudge. Look for the word nudge. You're going to start seeing it everywhere. The government's going to be nudging social media companies to, better watch out what we say. And, different groups and companies are going to be nudged in the direction of more sustainable use of resources. And people are going to be nudged in the development of tolerating all manner of things. This is them telling you in no uncertain terms. Remember, Biden administration signed us back onto the SDG goals and UNESCO. They're telling you what social emotional learning is for. They're telling you we were going to purposely harm your children, but just a little bit, because we, the development agents, we know how to, nudge them into more appropriate adaptive states to achieve the development goals of sustainability for, I guess, the planet. Your
World order.
kid's just one little person.
Right.
Notice they don't even speak about individuals except in passing. The individual might feel this. That individual is somebody's 6-year-old. Some innocent little kid that a parent kissed goodbye and sent off to school and said, I love you, go learn things. That's who that individual is that you're creating all this dissonance for. So I had to share that. I thought that was kind of important. And, we just, in case you're wondering, the National Conference of State Legislatures, they're all in on this. This is
Lots
not
of
a
money being
Republican,
made.
Democrat. What?
Lots of money being made off of education for private interest political groups.
Yeah, this isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a people against their government issue. This quite literally is what it is. That Republicans don't understand this or care about it any better than Democrats, and it's all a bunch of lies. So anyway, those are kind of like the receipts, I think, that we had, right? Did we miss any of our receipts? I don't think so.
No.
But
There's so much we could go on for days. We could have
we
our
easily
own.
could. So sum it up for us, Ramona. How does SEL, we asked the question, does it harm kids? Your answer is?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. It
How does
harms
it?
every child in every school, in every grade. And I caution parents to get involved, do not be afraid, and advocate for your children, because that is our job as adults, to protect children.
Exactly. And when people tell you they're doing something to intentionally create cognitive dissonance in your child so that your child will change their attitude about something for a so-called collective goal that you didn't vote for, you don't necessarily agree with, and it's going to be done behind your back using tools you don't like or don't get to see, don't get to review. And while in the same breath, telling you they're concerned about safety, they're concerned about emotional well-being. I've never seen such an inversion of reality in my life. We're going to talk endlessly about safety while creating cognitive dissonance and making you intensely unsafe emotionally. So you'll be bullied and browbeaten emotionally into changing your attitudes, or at least never developing attitudes that we would disagree with.
Very
Because you're so
cult-like.
little, you're not going to change your attitude. You're just going to never develop an attitude other than the one we want you to have, which is the goal.
Right.
This
It's
is
very
SEL is the delivery system for Marxism, of this particular variety of Marxism. It's not the
Neo-Marxism,
classical, neo,
neo-communism.
whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, fascism,
No,
whatever you want.
definitely. It is. And we need to stop it.
Yes. So,
So,
every time somebody tells you, but it's good, it's for their mental health, I learned to regulate their emotions, like regulate
no.
according to whose standards?
Right.
And how come I don't get to see those? And how come I don't get to approve or disapprove of them? Because I'm the parent. So those are just a few of the questions. Ramona, how can people what do people need to know about you as far as how they can find you, get more information, or
I will say where you can't find me. You can't find me on Twitter, because currently my profile is buried under layer upon layer upon layer of sensitive banners and shadow banning, you name it. Even click on my name and you won't find me on Twitter
I
at
know.
Ramona Bessinger. Forget it. I don't exist, apparently.
Yeah.
And you might find me on Facebook, but you have to, I guess, telepathically channel me, because I'm buried there too under some shadow banning. But let's see. I have a little organization. You can join my organization called K-12 Watch and sign up for the newsletter. I send out a weekly newsletter where I discuss topics related to K-12 education and give people sort of the tools and ways that they can fight back and maybe become aware of some of these initiatives that are taking place in our schools. So k12watch.org, that's a good way. Or you can
Yeah.
try to find me somewhere on social
And you're
media.
on Facebook too, at
I
Ramona
am on
Bessinger.
Facebook, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And as I said at the outset, Ramona's in Rhode Island and she's on administrative leave. I think part of why she's shadow banned and they have you on administrative leave is, you're on to them. So they don't want you. I mean, you haven't done anything wrong,
No,
right? So
no.
they just don't want you having access to students and who, you
No,
might
but
not
the thing
create
is,
enough.
the crazy thing is I would never bring any personal or political items into class. I just wouldn't do that.
It's
Who
not
does
that,
that,
Ramona.
right?
You're not going to create dissonance in your students. You're not going to
I
teach
want
gay
true
Romeo.
thinkers. I want real critical thinkers, you know?
Yeah, you're not gonna teach gay Romeo, and you're not gonna have conversations about anal sex in your classroom. So, if you're not gonna create enough dissonance for the matrix, you're a
Right.
glitch.
Out.
You're a glitch in the matrix, Ramona.
I
You need
know.
that. You need a t-shirt that says, "I'm a glitch in the matrix."
Oh, that's funny.
Because, your kids or your students would be those people who go, "Wait, what?"
There
So, yeah,
she
you're not allowed to be a glitch in the matrix. Maybe I'll
Oh,
make those t-shirts. I'll
okay.
make those t-shirts and I'll send you one. Anyway, thanks to everyone in the audience for coming and listening. And when you see us laughing and smiling about this, believe me, we don't think it's funny. We
Mm-mm.
don't. This is a defense mechanism against insanity, right,
The
Ramon?
absurdity. I mean, yeah, it's a defense mechanism against, the absurdity of the whole thing. You're absolutely right. It's not to minimize it in any way. This is terrible.
We're horrified. That one that I showed you from UNESCO just and people will tell me, you shouldn't read with that Valley Girl voice. It's really off-putting and it did, da, 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 da. And I'm like, you try to read that with a serious voice and not throw up. I have to do that. I have to mock them. I have to I have to treat them the way they ought to be treated. We should be mocking these people. They are talking crazy. This is insane. They don't deserve to be taken seriously. Take these ideas very seriously as a heart attack because they're dangerous. But when I'm reading the words of these people, I'm going to mock them. And I'm sorry if that offends, but they deserve it. If I were face to face with them, I would mock them double. I just think that's the way you need to treat people like this. People who are obsessed with power over other people. You need to mock them. You can't don't be afraid of it. Don't be like, "Oh, I'm scared of you. Don't do this." No, you mock them. You and what army are going to control me? So that's what I say. Anyway, thank you, Ramona.
Oh,
I
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
You
This was
you're welcome here anytime. You're just like,
good. I'm so
I
glad.
really want to I
Yeah.
want to I want to talk about this stuff and I'm just like anytime. Like you come weekly. I don't care.
Well, this was a necessary purge.
I
Needed.
appreciate it. The info is fabulous. The all now one last question. Am I able to share links to those in the description box, those presentations, or do I need to have people go to you to get them?
Are you talking about those lesson plans?
Like the lesson plans and all that stuff, are those publicly accessible as links or no?
Yeah, they're publicly. I mean, sure. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
okay.
I tweeted them
All
out.
right. I just wanted to if people wanted to go through them at their own
Yeah,
pace, because we kind of rushed
and then
it.
ask
There
questions. Sure.
Yeah, there may be people who want to go through it slowly and
Mhm.
just like look at it all. So I just want to make sure it's okay
Yeah,
to put that all. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks
Okay.
everybody for coming,
Thank
and we'll
you.
see you next time. Bye.
Bye, Deb.